So Minnesota is having huge protests. Minneapolis, and it's going to spread. There was one here in downtown of Los Angeles, and it was against the ICE raids. But I'm afraid these protests are going to go on, and they're going to get bigger, they're going to grow, and they're going to spread to other cities that are going through some similar issues with the ICE raids. So the Pentagon is now readying 1,500 troops for a potential Minnesota deployment. And this is what the U.S. officials have stated. So this story, you see who it's by, Idris Ali, Phil Stewart, and Shanai Shah. It wasn't that long ago that this was put out. It says looks like it says 8 minutes ago, so it's a 3-minute read. So we are now on MLK weekend, and Monday a lot of banks and a lot of things are closed. However, we're not living the dream. We're living a nightmare right now, currently under this administration. And a lot of people are reacting to the ICE raids, to the shooting of Nicole Good, and to the shooting of some of the other people before Nicole Good, Renee Nicole Good. And so you have Keith Porter, who was killed. He was a father, and he was celebrating for New Year's, and he was murdered by off-duty ICE agent. So a woman here in this still frame, she's reacting to being sprayed with pepper balls in front of a Bishop Henry Whipple federal building during a protest more than a week. This was after the U.S. Immigration Custom Enforcement, which is better known as an ICE agent, had fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so, which they're one and the same. So the U.S. January 17, 2026, this is when this photograph right here was taken. And so Washington, January 18. Okay, so the Pentagon, they want 1,500 active duty soldiers in Alaska to prepare for a possible deployment in Minnesota, the site of a large protest against the government deportation drive. 2 U.S. officials told the Reuters, this was on Sunday, so which is today, and the Army had placed the units on prepare to deploy orders in case violence in the midwestern state escalates. The officials have said this, though it is not clear whether any of them will be sent. So under President Donald Trump, he's threatened on Thursday, earlier this week, to use the Insurrection Act to deploy military forces if officials in the state do not stop the protesters from targeting immigration officials after a surge in immigration custom enforcement agents, which they also were released. It was like 3,000 or more of them. Instead of sending them out or sending the ones away since the incident, they've actually put more ICE agents out there in those cities. So it says, but if the troops are deployed, it's unclear whether Trump administration would invoke an Insurrection Act, which I will say this, I believe these whole incidences were what he wants. He wants to enact this Insurrection Act. I believe he wants protesters to be hurt, maimed, maybe even killed. And this is in my opinion, I feel like it's leading up to this, and that these protests are not going to stop. They're going to increase, and they're going to happen in other cities, and it's going to get more violent. And the protests, they may initially be for peaceful demonstration, but they're going to begin to get more violent because of the force that they're met with ICE agents and these U.S. threats of U.S. deployment of soldiers, military force, and maybe police officers. Because what I'm hearing is protesters are being blinded, they're being hurt, they're being roughed up, even if they're not using any weapons and they're not posing any threats. Just being out there and protesting is, in the eyes of the Trump administration, threat enough. And it's stripping away the rights of citizens of all these countries, all these states, all these jurisdictions where you as a citizen have some rights, but your rights are being stripped away with the show of force. So it says if the troops are deployed, it's unclear whether the Trump administration, if he's going to invoke this, what they call the Insurrection Act. Even without invoking the act, a president can deploy active duty forces for certain domestic purposes, such as protecting federal property. So when you're near the federal building, which Trump has cited as a jurisdiction for sending Marines to the LA last year, it can mean that they can use more force against protesters. This is what it's sounding like. So you see the still photos pretty much tell all of how people feel about no troops in our cities, because he's turning the military against citizens. So it says people are protesting ICE after the U.S. immigration agent was shot and killed this shot and killed Renee Nicole Good. She was 37 years old, and she was in her truck in Minneapolis. In New York City, this is the protest that's out there. So even though people don't live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, like I said, the protests are growing and they're going to spread to other cities because people are watching all of this unfold. So in addition to the active duty forces, the Pentagon could attempt to deploy newly created National Guard Rapid Response Forces for civil disturbances. So the Pentagon and the White House did not immediately respond to the request from Reuters for comments on the order, which was first reported by ABC News. And so you can see here, if you have YouTube, there's so many videos that are posted. This right here is a video of tensions building in Minnesota as ICE protests continue, and they are actually still going on right now. So the threat of troops follows a surge of immigration agents. So if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators, this is coming from Trump, of course. This is what he posted on Truth Social's platform. It says he calls them professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job. I will institute the Insurrection Act. So that's the threat that Trump has given. So the soldiers subject to deployment specialize in cold weather operations and are assigned to 2 U.S. Army infantry battalions under the 11th Airborne Division, which is based in Alaska, the official said. So confrontations between residents and federal officers have become increasingly tense in Minneapolis, Minnesota, most populous city after the ICE agent fatally shot Renee Good a U.S. citizen, and a mother of 3 children. This was January the 7th, and she was driving away after being ordered to exit her vehicle. And so Trump, a Republican, has sent nearly 3,000 federal agents from the ICE and Border Patrol and Customs to Minneapolis and neighboring St. Paul since early last week as part of a wave of interventions, mostly to cities run by Democratic politicians. And so he has said that troop deployment in LA, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Memphis, Portland, Oregon are necessary to fight crime and protect federal property and personnel from protesters. But this month, he said that he was removing the National Guard from Chicago, LA, Portland, which have faced legal setbacks and challenges. So local leaders have accused the president of federal overreach and exaggerating isolated episodes of violence to justify sending in troops. So Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, against whom the Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation, has mobilized the National Guard to support local law enforcement and emergency management agencies. The State Department of Public Safety posted on X on Saturday. So Trump has repeatedly invoked a scandal around theft of federal funds intended for social welfare programs in Minnesota as a rationale for sending in immigration agents. So the president and administration officials have signaled out the state's community of Somali immigrants. So the Insurrection Act, it is a federal law that gives the president the power to deploy the military or federalize National Guard troops inside the U.S. to quell domestic uprisings. So that's pretty much that article. And it looks like this is very intense and that it's not going to stop and that it's going to get worse. And this is the slow burn, which is now erupting into this violent show towards citizens in all of these cities and countries, I might add, now that he's wanting to take over Greenland and he's wanting to change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of the USA, and that he wants to now call himself not only the president of the U.S., but the president of not only the U.S., but Venezuela. And so if you just pay close attention, you'll see just how this thing is unfolding, and it isn't going in a good direction. I can tell you that. I'll assure you that. And it isn't stopping no time soon. So now people are trying to double up with family members. Rent has gotten high, food has gotten high. Trump had promised food prices would go down. We've been seeing here in the U.S. the food prices steadily climbing, especially on meat products. You know, it was eggs that went down a little bit, and it was the gas that went down a little bit, but now our food has gone up, meat has gone up, rent has gone up, and all of these landlords in these different neighboring cities and here in the U.S. have been, raising rents. And we know it's because the desperation of the cost of living is affecting everybody, and landlords included. But what's happened is by all these ICE raids and people self-deporting or getting deported, a lot of these apartments have been emptying out. And what I mean by emptying out, I'm seeing for rent signs everywhere. So a lot of these people who they're going into hiding, or they've left voluntarily the U.S. or left by force, we're seeing a lot of empty places. And with the empty places, comes no money. Not enough staff for jobs, even though there were huge layoffs in January to many companies. And we're seeing a lot of places that are being cleared out, which means these landlords, they're desperate. As I see for rent signs, I also see landlords begging people to move in. Well, I'll say to you, I was looking on this app. There's an app in the city of Inglewood, and it's called Morningside Neighbors, Next Door Neighbors, or something like that, it's entitled. And I saw this ad for an apartment, and it was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And the guy that advertised it, he was a landlord, I'm assuming, but he didn't want to say he is. He wanted $2,650, I think, something for this 2-bedroom. And he right away jumped in the comments because people started, I guess, looking at the apartment. It looked like somebody had just barely moved out, because you could see where things were still on the floor, where somebody might have been dragging things out. And it was a big apartment, but it wasn't that fancy. And it probably been around for a long time, because it's in these neighborhoods where people have their parents have lived, and they're now living, but they're paying like maybe triple or quadruple what their parents paid when they were living in these apartments. And so the man got an attitude right away. He jumped in the comments and he said, before you say that this apartment the rent is high, we might not want you living here anyway. It was real rude, because if you think it's too high, then we don't want you kind of tenants here anyway. And the way he said it, it was so mean, it was so rude. And then I had to look at who this man was, and I looked at him and I said, shame on him. And he was an African American man, and I'm thinking maybe he has a little money in his pocket and he owns the place and he has an attitude, and he's trying to figure out how to siphon money out of somebody because they left that apartment empty. And he knows he's going to lose money because nobody's going to live there. Nobody's got that kind of money to shell out right now because things are tight. And I don't know if he's been living under a rock himself, but a lot of people lost jobs this month in January. A lot of people are struggling. So to ask somebody to pay for a 2-bedroom with not very many amenities, and I will tell you, it was not worth what I was looking at, $2,600. And especially for him to have an attitude like that. Who would want to move in a place like that knowing your landlord is like that? So he's going to muscle you for money on every opportunity he gets. So probably he can't get anybody to move in, and if they move in and find out how he is, they probably are looking to move right on out, I would believe. I want to say this. I know this article here is just the opening, the eye-opener of what is about to happen. And I'm saying that because there's more going to happen out of all of this. But there are domino effects of all of this. This threatening citizens in U.S. cities, threatening other countries, threatening to take countries and to just go in and kidnap presidents and their wives out of countries and then call the country your country and then claim yourself as the president automatically by default. Just taking things from people and then muscling them, threatening them with deals that they must take the offer, or this and this is going to happen. None of these come with any good results in the end. And it's going to be met with aggression and force and anger. And the anger is boiling over. And so a lot of these things that we're seeing happening are going to get even more intensified over the next coming weeks. And the reason why I'm able to say these things is I see it before it happens. And I know that sounds crazy, but I sensed that this was coming. And I sense more coming, and it isn't good. But what I do see is a lot of empty apartments. Lots of landlords are going to lose their properties because of these rents. I foresee that coming as well. If they don't lower these rents, especially amid all of this chaos, a lot of these landlords are going to lose, if not thousands, maybe millions of dollars invested in these properties. Because you can't have this going on and think this America great thing is going to happen. It's all an illusion. And also, when you have people that are afraid of learning that they might one day be the minority, and then they begin to get greedy and they start wanting to take things. Colonialism is what they call it, colonialism. And they're threatening countries and threatening cities and with brute force and aggression. That any of this is going to amount to anything positive, it isn't. There's going to be a ripple effect. If you're running people out of the country and out of places that they've always known, you're going to increase homelessness. With homelessness, more homelessness brings crime and desperation. That is a given, and that's from any culture, any background. Doesn't matter where you're from. If you start cutting funding for schools, cutting out school programs, you're also hurting these people who are working that need childcare. That's going to create a ripple effect. If you're also making it that food is expensive to buy, just basic living has become a luxury, it's going to create a ripple effect. There is nothing good that is going to come from any of this. With these threats of terrorizing cities, sending troops to what you would say you're going to forcibly make people disperse from protests, you're stripping away the very fabric of what America was supposed to be about. Since it had evolved, at least from where it started. But we're learning very fast and quickly that America is showing its true colors of who those founding fathers were that claim they were about colonialism, racism, classism, power, control, and dominating other people in other countries, other groups, creating divisions, making deals, and just taking land, stealing, grabbing, land grabbing, country grabbing, resource grabbing. So when you see these shows of emotion like this, you don't see people that are on board with any of this. You don't see that people are welcoming these people into their cities to, oh, we're gonna fix things. No, it is making it worse. What do property values always, people who are in the business of real estate, they say the property values go down because of what? Crime. And what else? If you're sending troops into the city and there's a huge protest and huge dissent, people getting sprayed in the face, maimed and hurt, maybe even killed, property values are definitely going to go down. And people are going to start leaving, trying to go to places they think might be safer. And then you got the wealthy. They become scared because they know that they're part of the problem. The ultra wealthy, that is, of course, and some of the ones that aren't really helping. They're just kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to see where they're going to fit in or not fit in. And now California has imposed a tax on the wealthy, which that should have happened long ago, but now they're trying to pull away from that because they're afraid that if they do that, that's going to send the wealthy, the ultra wealthy packing, which some have decided they were going to do anyways. So that means people want to follow the money. So are you really invested in the people, or are you just invested in the money that comes here? Because if they really were trying to help, they could stop a lot of this stuff that people are dealing with now in these cities. They could contribute a lot of their ultra wealth to help communities, but they choose not to. So who really is the problem? That's the thing. So there's a lot of actors behind Trump that are just as bad, if not maybe just as, they're worse, or about the same level as he, same thinking. It's all about them. That ego of everything has to be their way or it's the highway attitude. So that is the reason why you're going to see more of these cities that primarily relied heavily on immigrant employment as well as U.S. citizen employment. And now you're attacking everybody. Not only just the immigrants are getting attacked, immigrant people. You're attacking people who are U.S. citizens. You're even shooting them and killing them. So do you think your property values are going to be any good after all of that? Probably not. Probably not. As people are going to fight back any way they know how. And if you don't lower these rents and lower the housing cost, you're going to see a lot of these apartments, a lot of these houses are going to have squatters in them. They're going to be destroyed. People are going to move in, give you a little bit of money, and stop paying the rent. And they're going to destroy your property. It happened in Detroit when they took all the jobs away from those people. You have empty houses that look abandoned. Nobody wants to live there because it is dangerous. And we're going to see that grow. It's in Oakland. Skid Row is going to explode. We're going to see more people living in makeshift housing like RVs, Winnebagos. Hell, probably some people living on the side of the freeway making their own house there. People are going to be living out of tents more, out of hotels. They're going to bop around from place to place. You're creating a disaster when you send these troops in to do this to these people. Pretty soon you're going to see rental companies are going to leave because the properties are going to go down in value. They're not going to get paid. These owners are going to ditch these properties, and then there'll be empty apartments with nobody managing anything. And they're going to go to hell in a handbasket. And that's where we're headed. And then we're going to have also other countries that are going to come in and do. You think 9/11 was bad? They're going to do 9/11.2 or 0.50. It'll be worse. They're going to show their aggression for you coming and taking their president and then threatening cartels. That's what's going to happen. It's going to get worse. You know how they used to tell black folks, pull up your bootstraps? Well, I want to tell you, hold on to your bootstraps, because we're not done yet. You think this is bad? These protests? That's a slow burn to what's about to come. And the only way to stop it is get this administration and get them out from under the U.S. Stop them. If you don't stop them, there won't be a U.S. It will be what was left of the U.S.